In a world of academia marked by impeccable appearances and rigid hierarchies, a chance encounter between a respected law professor and a discreet janitor triggers an unexpected transformation. When spilled coffee stains more than an Italian suit, hidden truths emerge, challenging perceptions and revealing that the deepest wisdom often resides in the corridors we traverse without truly seeing. The footsteps echoed solitary through the north corridor of the Thompson building, the steady rhythm of Italian leather soles marking the cadence of the morning. Professor Charles Whitman walked as he always did, with a straight spine, chin held high, eyes fixed on the horizon. His navy blue suit, custom-made on Savile Row, did not have a single crease out of place. It was more than an outfit. It was a statement of status, a visible reminder to everyone of who he was. "Good morning, Professor Whitman," a young student murmured, clutching her books to her chest as she stepped aside to make way for him. Charles responded with a brief nod without slowing his pace. After 23 years of teaching constitutional law, he no longer needed to strive to command respect. The reverence of the students was as natural as the light shining through the historic stained glass, bathing the polished wooden floor with colorful spots. At 52 years old, Charles Whitman was an institution within an institution. His articles were cited in the Supreme Court. His opinions were sought after by television networks. His name was mentioned in conversations as a symbol of academic brilliance. He carried the university in his resume, but also in his identity. It was impossible to imagine one without the other. What few knew was that Charles was born in a small house on the outskirts of an industrial city. His father, Jonathan Whitman, had been a carpenter for 40 years, with calloused hands that never knew the touch of a Montblanc pen. His mother sewed to supplement the family income. Those memories remained carefully archived in a distant part of his mind, like old documents that, although not destroyed, were never consulted. As he turned left towards the faculty lounge, Charles adjusted his silk tie. There was an important meeting with the dean that afternoon, and then a lecture for graduate students. The schedule was full, as always. There was no time for distractions. That's when he felt it, something wet on his right sleeve. He looked down and saw a brown stain spreading across the Italian fabric. Coffee. Someone had bumped into him with a cup of coffee. "My apologies, Professor," said a deep and calm voice. Charles looked up, immediate irritation taking over his face. Before him stood a black man, a few years older than him, wearing the gray uniform of the cleaning staff. The man was holding a cleaning cart and in the other hand, a half-empty paper cup. "Do you have any idea how much this suit costs?" Charles didn't shout, but his voice carried the weight of authority accustomed to not being questioned. "I'm very sorry, sir. It was an accident." The man maintained a serene dignity that for some reason heightened the professor's irritation. "Accident or not, this is Italian wool. It doesn't clean with water and soap." "I understand, Professor." The man looked directly into Charles's eyes with neither defiance nor submission. "My name is Isaiah Coleman. I've worked here for 26 years. Charles scarcely heard the introduction. A small audience was beginning to form, curious students, some assistant professors. It was embarrassing. He needed to settle this quickly. "Well, Mr. Coleman," he said, pronouncing the name as if it were an irrelevant detail, "since you caused the problem, I expect you to resolve it. This suit needs to be cleaned professionally, and quickly." Isaiah observed the stain for a moment. His eyes, marked by wrinkles at the corners, had a calm that contrasted with the professor's growing agitation. "I can handle this, Professor," he finally said. "If you can give me your suit at the end of the day, I'll take care of it personally." Charles raised his eyebrows. "You know how to handle fine fabrics." A subtle smile appeared on Isaiah's face. "I know more than I seem, Professor." Something about that answer bothered Charles, but he was running late, and the stain needed to be addressed. "I will be in my office at 5. Do not be late." With that, he went on his way, leaving the janitor and the curious glances of the students behind. The stain on the suit was annoying, but it would soon be dealt with. The incident would be forgotten like so many other small inconveniences that crossed his path, or so he thought. Isaiah Coleman watched the professor walk away, his posture rigid, his steps determined. 26 years working in those corridors had taught him how to read people. And Professor Whitman was an open book, at least for those who knew where to look between the lines. Resuming his work, Isaiah pushed the cart towards the men's bathroom that needed cleaning. His mind, however, was far from there. He thought about his late wife, Martha, who had passed away 5 years earlier after a battle with cancer. He thought about his 3 children, all graduated and building their own lives. And he also thought about the small specialized cleaning company he had founded 15 years ago, operating in his spare hours after his shift at the university. Coleman's fine cleaning had started with just Isaiah and Martha, cleaning houses and fine clothes in affluent neighborhoods. Now, it employed 8 people and had a solid reputation among clients who valued discretion and excellence. The irony did not escape him. Many clients would be surprised to discover that the university janitor was the owner of the company that took care of their most precious items. "Mr. Coleman," a voice interrupted his thoughts. Isaiah turned around. It was Lisa Chen, one of the doctoral students. "Good morning, Miss Chen. How is the work on compared political systems going?" The young woman smiled, surprised and pleased that he remembered. "Progressing well, but I wanted to say that I admired your composure. Professor Whitman can be intimidating." Isaiah wiped his hands on his uniform and smiled gently. "All men have their inner struggles, Miss Chen. Some are just more visible than others." Lisa nodded, thoughtful, before continuing on her way. Isaiah resumed his work, while his mind concocted a plan. Professor Whitman deserved respect like any human being, but he also deserved a lesson, one that only someone invisible to his eyes could teach. At 5 o'clock sharp, a soft knock sounded on Charles' office door. He barely looked up from the papers. "Come in." Isaiah appeared, still wearing the gray uniform, standing straight despite the long hours of work. "Good afternoon, Professor Whitman. I came to pick up your suit, as agreed." Charles looked at the clock, slightly surprised by the punctuality. He stood up, carefully took off the jacket, and handed it to the janitor. "The stain is from coffee. I need it back by the day after tomorrow, spotless." Isaiah received the suit with care, examining it with experienced eyes. "Brooks Brothers?" he asked, assessing the fabric between his fingers. Charles couldn't hide his surprise. "Actually, it's Armani. How did you?" "I recognize good fabrics, Professor, part of my job." There was something in the way Isaiah spoke, a calm confidence that didn't fit the image Charles had of a janitor. It was disconcerting. "When will I get the suit back?" asked Charles, trying to regain control of the situation. "Tomorrow afternoon, if that suits you. And as for the payment," Charles made a nonchalant gesture. "The university will cover it naturally. It was a work accident." Isaiah smiled slightly. "Actually, Professor, this service will be handled by my company. The university has nothing to do with it." "Your company?" Charles frowned. "Coleman's Fine Cleaning, specializing in delicate fabrics and luxury items." Isaiah took an elegant card from his pocket and placed it on the table. "We have clients throughout the region." Charles took the card, perplexity evident on his face. The design was sophisticated, the paper high quality. "Are you the owner?" "I founded it 15 years ago with my late wife. We started from scratch." Isaiah carefully folded the suit over his arm. "The payment details are on the card. I accept transfer or check." Before Charles could respond, Isaiah bid farewell with a respectful nod and left, leaving behind a momentarily speechless professor, a rare occurrence in academic circles. The next morning, the halls buzzed with rumors. Students whispered to each other, casting curious glances when Charles passed by. He sensed the change in the atmosphere but attributed it to the approaching final exams. In the staff room, your department colleague, Dr. Alina Wright, approached with a cup of tea. "I heard you met the King of Stains," she said with an enigmatic smile. "Excuse me." "Isaiah Coleman." The janitor who also owns the most exclusive cleaning company in the region. Alina took a sip of tea. My cashmere coat. I spilled red wine on it last year. I thought it was ruined until someone recommended his services. Impeccable work. Charles felt a growing discomfort. He didn't mention he was so established. Of course not. Isaiah is discretion personified. Alina leaned in slightly. Did you know he has a master's degree in chemistry? He developed some of the products he uses. But he chose to remain a janitor even after the company began to thrive. He says it keeps him grounded. Each word was like a small revelation, reorganizing the puzzle that Charles had built in his mind about Isaiah Coleman. Why did you never mention this? He asked, more to himself than to Alina. Maybe because no one asked, she replied simply before walking away. At 4 o'clock sharp, Isaiah knocked on the door of Charles's office. This time, he was wearing a simple but well-ironed dress shirt and dark trousers. It wasn't the janitor's uniform, nor a formal suit, just the common clothes of a dignified man. Your suit, Professor, he said, handing over the jacket protected by a transparent plastic cover. Charles received the piece and inspected it carefully. The stain had completely disappeared, and the fabric looked even more vibrant than before. Impressive, he admitted reluctantly. How did you manage that? Isaiah smiled. Trade secret, but it involves a specific treatment for natural fibers that we developed. Charles nodded slowly, still processing the situation. On his desk was Isaiah's card next to a filled-out check. Your payment, he said, extending the check. The requested amount. Isaiah accepted the paper, briefly checked it, and slipped it into his shirt pocket. Thank you, Professor. It is always good to do business with the university. There was a subtly provocative tone in that sentence that did not go unnoticed by Charles. An uncomfortable silence settled between them. Mr. Coleman, Charles began, choosing his words carefully. I must admit that I made hasty judgments about you. It is common, Professor. Isaiah's tone was gentle without accusation. We see what we expect to see. Why continue as a janitor when you have a successful business? Isaiah looked out the office window, towards the gardens where students were walking between classes. My father was a janitor at an elementary school. He taught me that there is no greater dignity than taking care of the spaces where people learn. He turned to Charles. Besides, this job keeps me humble. It reminds me daily that all people deserve respect, regardless of what they wear. The words hit Charles like an unexpected wave. Suddenly, he found himself remembering his own father, the carpenter whose rough hands had built the table where he did his homework, the simple man who could never attend university but who revered knowledge. My father, Charles began, surprising himself, never wore a suit his entire life. Isaiah smiled, understanding. But he raised a son who wears Armani. He must have been a remarkable man. He was. The admission came with an emotion that Charles hadn't felt in years, though I rarely acknowledge it. Isaiah remained silent, allowing the moment to unfold naturally. You know, Charles continued after a few moments, when I started at the academy, I came from a very different background than my peers. I quickly learned that appearance and behavior were as important as intellect, and buried your origins under layers of refinement, Isaiah gently completed. Charles stared at him, surprised by the sharp insight. How do you know? I recognize the signs. Many of us have gone through that, some to survive, others to advance. Isaiah adjusted his posture. The difference is that some forget where they came from. Others carry their roots as strength, not as shame. A group of students passed by in the hallway, their lively voices creating a contrast to the serious conversation in the office. Every day before coming to work, Isaiah continued, I read a verse from the Bible that my wife gave me. Psalm 90:17, May the favor of the Lord rest on us. Establish the work of our hands. Charles had never been particularly religious, but there was something in the sincerity of those words that struck a deep chord. The work of our hands, he repeated thoughtfully, whether it's cleaning stains or writing academic articles. Exactly, Professor. Another silence, this one less uncomfortable than the last. "Mr. Coleman." "Isaiah," Charles corrected himself. "I'd like to invite you for coffee. Not to spill on expensive suits," he added with a hesitant smile, "but to chat. Perhaps I have more to learn from you than I imagined." Isaiah nodded, a gleam of satisfaction in his experienced eyes. "It would be an honor, Charles. And I promise to bring my own paper towels, just in case." They both laughed, and something changed irrevocably in that office. It wasn't friendship yet. It was too early for that, but it was recognition. The recognition that dignity does not come from titles or positions, but from the integrity with which one lives each day. When Isaiah left, Charles remained in his office, looking at the impeccable suit and thinking not about the Italian fabric, but about the hands that had restored it. The same hands that cleaned the hallways through which he walked daily, so absorbed in his own importance that he had become blind to the nobility surrounding him. That afternoon, in an elegant office of a prestigious university, a professor learned a lesson that was not in any book in his extensive library. That true wisdom often comes from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes, to truly see, one must first recognize their own blindness.